Welcome to another edition of the Sports Wrap with Michael Kravetz. I am your host, Michael Kravetz, and in today's episode, I guess there's nowhere other to start but with the Steelers game last night against the Ravens here at Heinz Field, where they wore their alternate jerseys again, the Bumblebee ones. And it was a defensive game, to say the least, and Steelers ended up losing 13-10. Now, what happened in this game? Byron Leftwich, in the first drive, Steelers got the ball first. He ends up running for a 31-yard touchdown run. And I did not see it coming at all. And I remember commenting, this is going to be a blowout. The Steelers are going to dominate this game. I just feel like there's too much going for them right now. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They're undefeated at home. Even with Leftwich, thought they were going to dominate the Ravens. Well, it didn't turn out that way. Because the Ravens then got a field goal to make it 7-3. Steelers offense pretty much dulled out from there. That first drive, huge 40-yard pass interference call. They went deep to Mike Wallace. It was incomplete, but they got the interference call. That was pretty much the catalyst for that drive. And then the 31-yard touchdown run. Not too often in the whole first half, and not until about the third quarter, did the Steelers offense show any signs of life. And the Ravens, their offense wasn't that good either, but they made enough plays to where they put themselves in a good situation. It wasn't until late in the first quarter when Jacoby Jones returned a punt return for a touchdown, 62 yards, and that gave Baltimore the lead. They didn't have an offensive touchdown the entire game. They added two more field goals, or they added a field goal, another field goal to make it 13-7, and then the Steelers had a great opportunity in the third quarter, late in the third quarter. It was a huge 15-yard pass to Jonathan Dwyer, a big third down and one run by Baron Batch, and then a huge catch by Emmanuel Sanders, and then there was a helmet-to-helmet hit on Ed Reed. So the Steelers had the ball in the red zone, and the problem was that they used 2 timeouts on that drive because they couldn't get a play in. It was poor clock management, and they had to settle for a 22-yard field goal by Sweezum to make it 13-10. And what I thought was a horrible call was that it was 3rd and 2, and they go for a fade route to Wallace, and he makes the catch, but he only gets 1 foot in. And if I'm Tomlin right there and Haley, I run the ball on 3rd down and 2, and then if it's 4th and 1, 4th and inches, you go for it again because your offense was not scoring. And I thought it was paramount that you get a first down, you get in the end zone to try and get the 14-13 lead. But it didn't happen that way. And so Baltimore had the ball back in the fourth quarter. They really didn't do much at all. 3 punts. But late in the fourth quarter, it started after the touchdown run by Leftwich. He kind of stumbled in the end zone afterwards, and it seemed like the entire game, his ribs or his arm, shoulder, he was wincing. He was in pain, but he stayed in the game. And late in the fourth quarter, you could tell because there was a pass to Wallace that came up short, and it didn't even look like Wallace attempted to go get it, so he should have had more of an effort to try and get it. But it seemed like Leftwich's passes, they just came up short. And when Baltimore had the ball with about 2 minutes and 10 seconds, it was a 3rd and 7. And Tomlin decided to use his final timeout with 2:04 to go. That was a horrible mistake. Because Kiesel jumped off sides on the play, and it went to the 2-minute warning anyway. So it was now a 3rd and 2. Luckily, though, Flacco was sacked on the play by Harrison. The bad thing was, since Tomlin used the timeout before, Steelers didn't end up getting the ball back until about 1 minute and 5 seconds left. If he would have took the timeout after the 2-minute warning, they would have had the ball with about 1:40 to go. Just that was poor clock management by Tomlin, and that has happened previously in the past couple years. That's something that he has not been able to fix. But the Steelers started their last drive on their own 16-yard line with about 1 minute to go, no timeouts. It would have been a miracle, and there were a couple nice passes. They got to about their own 40-yard line, or my mistake, their own like 35, 40-yard line. And there was a pass where Leftwich, he threw it as deep as he could, and David Gilreath was open, but not enough air was put under the ball and it fell short. And I think it was due to the Leftwich's arm, because he could throw the ball. He can throw the ball 50 yards. And that was about a 40-yard pass, and it only went about 30 to 35 yards. So that was critical as well. And on the last play, it was a lateral play, and it didn't work. So once again, the Steelers fall short at home to the Ravens. The Ravens are now 8-2, first place in the division. Steelers are now 6-4. They still have a one-game lead over the Bengals for second place. The season ended today. They'd still be in the playoffs. They'd be the number 6 seed. But it's going to take a miracle finish pretty much for the Steelers to end up winning this division, because it's just the way things are panning out. Now, in this game, the Steelers offense, I mean, you shouldn't have expected a lot out of Leftwich. He was 18 to 39. He threw an interception, 201 yards passing, the 31-yard touchdown run. He played a good game. If he was not injured, as you could tell that he was, he probably would have pulled out the victory. But the running game was not there. I mean, Dwyer gave you the initial plays, the first downs. He came up big and late in the game. 55 yards on 12 carries. Mendenhall, 11 carries on 33 yards. His return did not really spark anything. And Isaac Redmond had to end up leaving the game. He only had 1 carry. And in the passing game, or the receiving game, Emmanuel Sanders showed that he came up with some big catches. 3 receptions for 82 yards. Cautry was relatively silent. I think he needed to step up a little bit more in this game. And Mike Wallace, 4 catches for 26 yards. I don't know what's wrong with him. He fumbled on the one play where the drive could have amounted to something. His effort was questionable on some of the balls thrown his way. I don't know. I think it's just in his head right now, and he just has to step it up and start playing his potential, because I know he doesn't want to go out like this with the Steelers. He is a talented player, and he just has to start showing up each and every Sunday. And on the defensive side, they played a great game. They didn't give up a touchdown. They gave up 6 points because the special teams gave up the punt return. The only problem was they didn't get enough pressure on Flacco, and they didn't force any turnovers. That was the key. The Ravens forced a fumble and an interception. Steelers forced nothing. Harrison and Woodley each got a sack, but there's not enough blitzers got through, and no turnovers. That's what it amounted to. And Steelers, they don't seem to win when they don't force any turnovers, unless they get a huge game from the offense. And that's going to be the key for these final 6 games. The defense has to start producing more sacks and forcing more turnovers. It's the only way they're going to make the playoffs. But as we look now toward these next 6 games, they got Cleveland next week. Cleveland coming off a tough overtime loss by 3 points to the Cowboys in Dallas. Cleveland they've played every game tough. They're 2-7, but they could very easily well beat the Steelers. So the Steelers have to be ready. And the question is, will Antonio Brown be ready? When will Polamalu be back? Will Isaac Redmond be ready to play? He had a concussion. I don't know. And I don't think Ben's going to play Cleveland. I'm hoping. The doctors they initially reported yesterday that he would miss 3 weeks. So he would be back for the December 9th game against San Diego, meaning he would miss the second Baltimore game. I think he wants to try with all his might to come back for that game, because that game will be crucial. The Steelers lose that game, there's no hope of them winning the division. And depending on if they were to lose, how they lose it, that will put jeopardy in their playoff hopes. Because the way you see it now, the Colts right now are tied with the Steelers. I mean, I don't think it matters with the 5 and 6 spot in the AFC, because the top 4 teams right now, the Texans, Patriots, Broncos, and Ravens, they're all tough games regardless. So whoever the 5 and 6 seed is, it doesn't really matter. The teams right behind the Steelers, Bengals are 5 and 5, and then you have the Titans, who are 4 and 6, Bills 4 and 6, Dolphins 4 and 6, and the Jets 4 and 6. So, my mistake. The Chargers are also 4 and 6. So Steelers, and the bad thing is the tiebreaker, they don't have any advantage there because they've already lost 4 games against AFC opponents. So they can't end up tied with any of these teams. And the question will be, will Byron Leftwich even play against Cleveland? Obviously, Charlie Batch is there. He's 5-2 as a starter for the Steelers. There were reports, though, today that they will be working out quarterbacks. And the 3 that come to mind that I think they're going to work out, Donovan McNabb, Tyler Palko, and David Garrard. And whether Dennis Dixon will be there because the Ravens picked him up for just this game, if he's still there, they'll work him out. But I think they would be just for backup purposes because I don't think you would be working out a guy to come in here and start right away. So it will either be Leftwich or Batch, and then someone will be a second or third string quarterback signed to the team. But they just have to be ready to play. It's going to be another grimy game, and that's how it's going to be until Ben gets back. Grimy defensive battles. And like I said before, the Steelers' defense has to force turnovers. They have to produce more sacks for them to win. The way it's looking now, I could see the Steelers end up finishing 10-6. I think they're not going to get in if they're 9-7. 10-6 will get you in the playoffs, but you just got to hope that the Steelers don't end up tied with any teams, and that they can just find a way to get in. Because if they're playing hot at a certain time, doesn't matter if they're a 5-6 seed. Hot teams usually make it to the Super Bowl. Happened with the Giants. Happened with the Packers. Just how it's going to be. So, looking to next week, I think the Steelers are going to end up beating Cleveland. They've beaten them 16 out of the 17 times recently. They've won 4 in a row. I think it's going to be another grimy game. I think it'll be 24-10 Steelers. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but I just still think the Steelers are going to find a way to win. But now we're going to move on to, there was no Pitt football game this past weekend, but I'll touch a little bit on that. They are hosting Rutgers for the final home game this year at Heinz Field on Saturday. Noon start time. Rutgers has one loss to Kent State. They're undefeated in the Big East. They have the inside track of making the BCS Bowl, representing the Big East. And, it's possible that Pitt's going to upset them. I am stunned that Pitt's favored by 2 points. It's going to take a great all-around game by Sinceri in the running game and the defense. So it's banking a lot, but I think Pitt's going to fall short. I'm going to say Rutgers wins the game 31-24. I don't see Pitt putting up any much of a fight. I mean, they still have a chance to make a bowl game if they win their last 2 to be 6-6, but I don't see it happening with this Pitt team. There have been letdowns, games that they should have won where they've blown. So it's just Pitt's an average team, not anything special. So I don't see them beating Rutgers. And now we're going to get into some Pitt basketball. The game, they beat Lehigh I believe it was last Wednesday. And Lehigh hung around with them into halftime. Pitt was only up by 5. And the big thing, though, that I took from the game, I mean, Pitt ended up beating them, trashing them, really, by 35 points. But, or my mistake, by 25 points. They held C.J. McCollum, who was voted on the preseason All-American team, to less than 15 points. And he looked bothered all game. That's huge, because I think Lehigh, they're going to win the Patriot League. They're going to get in the tournament. And they could pull off another upset. But I think that was a huge win. I mean, that's the best Pitt win so far this year. But that was just a good sign, because Pitt's defense, they stepped it up in the second half. Got good contributions from Talib Zana, his second 20-point game of the year. That was key. For the game on Saturday, it was only on the radio. Wasn't able to listen to much of the first half. I look on ESPN.com. I see that Pitt is down 34-20 at halftime to Oakland. And Oakland is another good team out of the Summit League. And I could see them making the tournament as well. But I looked at that score and I was just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Not another letdown loss at home to a team that Pitt should have won. They were favored by 20 points, I believe. So I listened to the game the whole second half. And the troubling thing is that the offense was not doing well. Up to about 15 minutes that were left in the second half. At that point, Oakland was shooting 52%. or 53%. Pitt was shooting 32%. That just cannot happen. I mean, Pitt's defense was playing well, but their offense was not performing well at all. And what troubled me was that Lamar Patterson, in this game, I was listening. He had shots, open shots, and he just kept missing them. He was 0 for 7. He had 2 points courtesy of the free throw line, but he just has to step it up to really help this team jump to the next level because he is key. He had a great end of the season last year. He just has to keep stepping it up. But in the game, James Robinson, Dante Taylor, J.J. Moore, huge contributions. Pitt was down as much as 18 points in the second half. And yeah, with 11 minutes and 35 seconds left in the second half, they were down by 18 points. And what do you know? Pitt clawed and scratched their way back just like they did back in 2010 where they had all those comeback wins against West Virginia and Louisville. And they ended up sending the game to overtime. And it was a gift-wrapped overtime because Oakland ended up turning the ball over 4 times in the final 37 seconds of regulation. And there was a 5-second call and then a huge steal by James Robinson. And Pitt was down 58 to 56. And they had the ball with about 15 seconds. And there was a key traveling call on James Robinson, the freshman point guard. And he stepped up on the next play. He stole the ball. And then they fouled him. So he had 2 critical free throws that he had to make to send the game to overtime. And he drained both of them. And then in the overtime, it was dominated by Pitt. They outscored Oakland 14-4. They end up winning the game 72-62. They've improved now to 4-0. And it was just an all-around great effort by everyone in the game. Dante Taylor, huge, 12 points off the bench. J.J. Moore, 16 off the bench. And then, as I mentioned, James Robinson, 14. It's just an all-around great game. And I think this Pitt team, I think they're definitely going to make the tournament now based off this win because that just shows their character and their effort. And it sets up for a pivotal, well, I know it's early, but a huge showdown in Madison Square Garden for the preseason NIT, number 5 Michigan. And Michigan is a really good team. They're definitely a Sweet 16 team, possibly an Elite 8 team. That's going to be a tough game. And if Pitt can just shoot better on the offense and still play tough D, I could see Pitt pulling off the upset. But I don't think they're going to win, though, just because it's so early. If they were to play Michigan again, maybe in the NCAA tournament, with the more experience with Adams and Robinson, it might be a different game. But I think it'll be close, but I think Michigan's going to have the edge. I could see it maybe being like 72 to 65, something along the lines. But I think what's key, though, for Pitt coming down with the rest of the season, they hold teams under 65 points, 65 or under. I think they're going to win because with the rare exception there, the Pitt's offense, I think, is a lot better equipped than they have been in a long time. So, obviously, they don't have a lot of good three-point shooters, but they just have a good offense, I believe, all around. So, if they hold a team to under 65 points, I think Pitt's going to win, and every time. And I also like to mention that John Johnson, the sophomore shooting guard, he left the team earlier in the week, and he's transferring. I don't know to where, but he decided to leave the team. I guess he was upset with the rotation. I guess he wouldn't be seeing that much playing time, but I mean, he was an all right player in his freshman year. And Dixon just said that he wishes the best for him, but I mean, this is the second instance now in 2 years. Ken Birch transferred last year, now John Johnson, but I guess just because of the players that the Pitt has right now that they're using in the rotation, they're just performing better than Johnson. So I'm really looking forward to this Pitt team. I'm gonna have to tape the game though, unfortunately, on Wednesday night. It's on ESPN2 at 9:30, but it'll be interesting to watch that and see how this Pitt team fares against the top national power so far. Because if you think about it, the rest of Pitt's schedule, now the winner of the Pitt-Michigan game will face the winner of the Delaware-Kansas State game. And I think Kansas State is a much better team than Delaware, so if Pitt were to lose to Michigan, they'd play Delaware. I could see Pitt definitely beating Delaware. If they were to beat Michigan, though, and face Kansas State, that would provide another quality win if Pitt were to be able to get it. And like I said, if they lose to Michigan, they end up having to face Delaware. The rest of Pitt's non-conference schedule, they don't play that many good quality teams. They play a few teams from the lower tier Division I conferences where those teams might represent that conference in the tournament, but not enough quality wins where you can say, oh yeah, well, if Pitt were to play average in the Big East, their non-conference schedule would get them in the tournament. They just don't play anybody that is that good. So you just got to hope that they can stack up at least one or two quality wins in their trip to Madison Square Garden, because that would really help their resume when it comes to NCAA tournament time. But other than that, for the NHL, the labor negotiations, both sides are meeting today, so hopefully some optimism around that situation. No other further news on that. And and Andrew McCutchen ended up finishing in third place in the NL MVP race. The award was announced last Thursday, and I was surprised. He finished behind Ryan Braun. Buster Posey won it by a substantial margin, and he deserved it. But I thought McCutchen should have finished in second. I don't understand why Braun was ahead of him. It's a conundrum. I don't even think Braun, with the season he had, yes, I thought he should have finished in fifth place just because of the whole steroid accusation from last year. But so be it. I don't see how he could have finished ahead of McCutchen. So, but don't worry, McCutchen will get his share of MVPs in the future. I can guarantee you that. But that'll do it, though, for today's show. And next week, there may not be a show next week. It all depends. But the next few weeks, with my finals week coming up for school, really got to study and buckle down there. So depending on if there will be a show or not, I apologize. But if there will be, of course, I'll get into the Steelers-Browns game, Pitt Rutgers, Pitt's trip to Madison Square Garden, any other news on the NHL, and if the Pirates make any signings. But coming up either tomorrow or Wednesday, I'm not sure yet, it will be the Pirate Season in Review show, where I will go over everything and also preview ahead for maybe some of the possible free agents, some early predictions maybe too for next year. Yeah, it'll be a fun show. And depending on when I do it, I may be joined again by Corey Cunningham, who co-hosted a show with me back in the summer, back in August. So it'll be nice to get another person's take on the Pirate team. So that'll do it. And signing off of the Sports Wrap, I am Michael Kravetz.